Also, Lance, you founded the Williams College Hot Sauce Club.
Oh, I did. It unfortunately ended when the pandemic began, but it was incredible. I mean, I probably tried over 200, 250 hot sauces during that time.
Are you a hot sauce fan?
I am, but not to this extent.
We hadn't discussed this. It was a great organization.
It sticks out. For
it does.
Yeah,
for sure. That is great. I mean, I was also gonna plug the hot sauce at Continental Divide.
I think I've heard about this place from you on a previous podcast episode.
I talk about it way too much. I need to stop.
And I still haven't gone yet, but
okay.
I feel like this is a sign.
Now you have to go.
It's a sign. This is Admissible. I'm Natalie Blazer, Dean of Admissions at UVA Law. I'm so excited about today's show because I've been wanting to talk about this topic pretty much from the time I first launched Admissible back in 2022. Actually, the subject of today's episode is a huge part of my motivation for starting the podcast in the first place. My guests today are second-year law students Lance Ledet and Bridget Mensah. Lance grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, and graduated from Williams College in 2021. Prior to matriculating at UVA Law, Lance worked as an admissions counselor at Williams College. Originally from New Jersey, Bridget Mensah graduated from Carnegie Mellon University in 2021. Prior to matriculating at UVA Law, Bridget worked as a market insights analyst for IBM in New York. Lance and Bridget are joining me today because they serve as the president and vice president, respectively, of the Virginia Law First Generation Professionals Student Organization here at UVA Law. Welcome to the show, Lance and Bridget.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
So great to have you guys here. So in your introductions, I specifically kept them very short. I left out all of your college extracurriculars, various positions you both held while in undergrad, not only because you were both so involved while you were in school, I couldn't possibly name all the things, but also because I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to highlight for listeners maybe one or two of the most meaningful activities or roles you had while in college.
Sounds good.
You want to start us off?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I attended Carnegie Mellon University. While at Carnegie Mellon, I was the first year representative, the treasurer, and the president of the Young African Leaders Association. My family's originally from Ghana, and so I really wanted to find a community while I was there. That was a really great opportunity for me to connect with others who came from similar backgrounds and hold leadership positions as well.
I feel like in this context, I have to say I was on the mock trial team.
Yep.
And I did love that for all 4 years. The thing that I think really animated me during college and kind of led me to work in the admission office for a few years before law school, though, was my involvement with Matriculate, which was an organization that works with low-income, a lot of first-gen students to give free college advising. So I was an advisor, and I led the cohort at Williams, and it was just really cool to be able to work and kind of give back to the first-gen community and advise students.
Yeah, that's amazing. So since most of our listeners are law school applicants or soon-to-be law school applicants, most of them, maybe not everybody, but a lot of them, I like to sort of give out advice whenever possible on this show. I just want to say, going back and reading y'all's files for this episode, your resumes, both of you, are like the template of what I wish everybody did with their resume. I'm serious. It was clean. It was specific. It highlighted your roles and your organizations. And you guys just did such a great job, not only just the way that you put your resumes together, but also highlighting for me and the admissions team, what kind of community member you would be. And lo and behold, here you are holding leadership positions at UVA Law. So I just wanted to say well done to both of you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
Probably listeners are like, I want to see these resumes. Sorry. So let's start with just a little bit of an icebreaker before we get into the show. We were chatting a little bit before we went live about what you did this summer. Do you have a favorite moment from over your summer?
That's a really good question. So I was in-house this past summer, and so we had a lot of opportunities to do pro bono work and volunteer with different organizations, both in the New York City area and just across the United States. And so I was able to do some work with the Florida Rights Coalition to help recently released prisoners gain back their voting rights. It kind of like allowed me to build on some of the research skills that I had developed as I went out. And so I just really enjoyed it. And it was like a nice break from like the everyday work that I was doing for like, the organization. So
that's so great. Getting involved in pro bono early.
Yes.
Very good thing to do. How about you, Lance?
So I was in Washington, D.C. over the summer. I was working for a judge at the district courthouse, and it was, I think, a surreal experience, like pretty much on the first day, being given just like a docket number and being like told to look at the filings, look at the issues, research them. And, over the course of the summer, I wrote a memo kind of being like, I think this is where the law is. And then my clerk and judge being like, that's wonderful, like draft the opinion now. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm the one you mean to be asking to do that, but I'll give it my best shot. So that was really like deeply, I think, professionally as well as like academically, personally. It was just super rewarding. I have to put a plug in though. I went to 5 baseball games over the summer. I've heard that the Nats Park or Nats Stadium, I'm forgetting the name, is maybe not the nicest in the country. I loved it. I thought it was a great time. And I have to also give a plug. I think I got into all that because of softball. I was like, I learned softball, and I was like, maybe I go to a few games, and I went to 5.
That softball culture seeping in. I love it. And so I just love to hear you guys had both such amazing work experiences just really after your 1L summer. So that's awesome. Okay, the topic of today's show is navigating law school, both the admissions process and the actual attendance of law school as a first-generation student. So I want to first define what we mean when we say the term first generation. I've seen it described a couple different ways in various places, but for the purposes of this show, I'm going to use the definition that we at UVA Law use on our admissions application. Our question reads, with respect to 4-year college, university, or its equivalent, are you or will you be in the first generation of your immediate family or the household in which you grew up to graduate from such a school? Second, with respect to graduate or professional school, are you or will you be in the first generation of your immediate family or the households in which you grew up to graduate from such a school? So the shorthand that I use for each of these definitions is first generation college, right? Like you're the first one in your family or household to graduate from college, and first generation professional, meaning, you're the first in your family to graduate from professional school. So do those terms like jibe with y'all's understanding of what first generation means?
Yes, I think so. I think yes, and I think the way that we approach it in the Virginia law, first generation professionals, I think it's all those things, and also just anybody who kind of feels as though their experience up until law school would lead them to being able to benefit from the opportunities we're giving, right? If it's an event or it's the community we're fostering, whatever kind of programming we're offering as a group, if you could find yourself being benefited by it and you kind of feel as though you're first gen in some ways, maybe you're from a working class background, a blue collar background, first in your family in the United States, something like that.
Got it.
You certainly are welcome.
So you're very inclusive, it sounds like.
Yes. I would say for me personally, prior to law school, I heard the term like first gen college student like thrown around a lot. It wasn't until I started like applying to professional school, applying to graduate school, that I started hearing the term or the definition for first generation professionals.
I had not heard the first gen professional either until I think a few years ago. So now that we know sort of what we're talking about when we're talking about first generation students, I want to just dive a little bit into y'all's background. So let's start with Lance. Tell me where you're from, a little bit about your family of origin, if you would like to, your college experience, work experience, really sort of anything that you want to share that will kind of paint the picture of where you were leading up to law school.
Sure. I think that the short answer is I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, out west. The longer, a little bit more detailed answers, I was originally born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So my mom is from Mississippi. My dad is from Louisiana. My dad was a construction worker. My mom is still an accountant. And so we just kind of moved around from different job sites. And that was, as a kid, it was kind of cool. I got to see a lot of different places. And I eventually moved out west to Elko, Nevada. not a ton of people have heard of, but it's a small mining town in northern Nevada, eventually to Las Vegas. And I went to middle school and high school in Vegas. And so I feel like I kind of like became conscious in Las Vegas, and I consider myself from there. And then from there, I went to college in Northwest Massachusetts in a very small town.
Very
in Williamstown.
different.
Very, very different from Las Vegas. Williamstown is like a town of like 2,000 people. It has like a single street. It's a very, very small town. And I stayed there for all 4 years of college and then 2 years as an admission officer. And then I wound up in Charlottesville, and kind of comparing all these different places. Being in Williamstown for so long was wonderful, both because it's beautiful and I really love the area and the people I was working with, people I got to meet. But it makes Charlottesville feel like New York City to me. I mean, like there's more than one street. There's like more than 2 coffee shops. It's like so much to do here. And it also still has like, I think, all of that natural charm, the Shenandoah Mountains and just we're in wine country. We're just in still such a cool place. So that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Bridget?
Yeah, so I think I've always been on the East Coast for the most part. I was born and raised in New Jersey. My family's from Ghana, so I spent, I want to say, the first 4 or 5 years of my life in Ghana, and then came back to the United States, and then went to middle school, high school, all in New Jersey. I branched out a little by going to Pittsburgh for college, and then after college, I worked for some time, and then I'm here in Charlottesville now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just always been in this area somewhat.
Got it. So at what point or, what experience or moment, led you to decide you wanted to go to law school? We can start with you, Bridget.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I would say I've always kind of known that I wanted to go to law school. I went to a magnet high school in New Jersey, and so I was in the law and justice program there. So I actually got to take some introductory law courses like constitutional law and criminology, which I really enjoyed. And so that kind of opened my eyes to a legal career. And then more specifically, I started becoming interested in education law and education policy. My senior year of high school, I did a research paper on sort of the disparities in K through 12 education. And I really saw how the law could be a tool for change. And I've been privileged with the educational opportunities that I've been afforded. And so the same couldn't be said for a lot of people who live just a few minutes away from me in New Jersey. And I found that super concerning. And I just wanted to see what I could do to help with this issue. But I also knew that law school was a big commitment. And so I decided to take time off after graduation just to really explore other interests, but still figure out if law school was where I wanted to go next. And so I decided that after 2 years of working, now was the time to go. And then I actually, just a little plug, I spent the summer at a firm before attending law school through the SEO law program. And so if any listeners want to look into that, I would definitely recommend the SEO law program.
SEO, yes, is a wonderful program. And just for those who do not know, SEO stands for Sponsors for Educational Opportunity. They have a lot of different programs, but the SEO Law Fellowship in particular is designed for folks who have been admitted to law school, and so they are starting law school in the fall, and they are placed in a law firm to get sort of summer experience leading into their 1L year. And I think really just opens your eyes to life at a law firm and provides you with a lot of resources and contacts and just, I think that program is fabulous. We love SEO people for anyone who's listening. Lance, how about you?
I think from really the moment I was born, I was always going to go to college. And in my parents' eyes, they're you're going to go to college. You're going to have all these opportunities. This is your path. And when I was probably just learning to walk, they were you could be a doctor, an astronaut, just anything. Just go to school, stay in school. When I was in high school, I'm sure this is a common story. I did debate, and I enjoyed public speaking, and I enjoyed arguing, and I enjoyed research, and I was just a nerd, and I owned that. And I think throughout high school, when I got to college, every class I took, I think every time a topic would get interesting, just when we were just starting to talk about the most interesting things, the professor would be that's kind of more of a legal issue, or this is that's something you're going to learn in law school if you go, or something like that. And then we go to the next topic. And so I just feel I kind of kept running into, at least academically, these instances where I didn't really get to fully sink my teeth into learning about what the law was or what it did. I didn't really know any lawyers growing up. And so it was just this kind of mysterious thing out there. And when I was in college and I joined mock trial, I was like, this probably isn't like what real law is like, but I enjoyed learning about like the rules of evidence, like all these things. And so it just felt right. I think it was just like a kind of a gut thing. Maybe that's not the best generalizable advice, but
I think it is. I think the combination of what you two both just said, actually. So, Bridget, you're talking about, wow, I'm really like, seeing how law can affect change, and you're kind of learning about areas of our society that frankly need help. And Lance, I mean, you're talking about just what you enjoy doing and your skill set. And like, I think you take those two and you put them together, and like, that's a great way to kind of hone in on the fact that law school might be right for you.
I will say I haven't regretted it yet.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Still have 2
All right.
full years.
I feel the same
change
way.
my mind.
Well, if you haven't regretted it after 1L year, it's only getting better from here. So don't worry. So I'm curious, were there resources that you took advantage of when you were applying to law school? Did you kind of ask questions of other people? Did you Google it? Like, I'm just curious how you navigated that path.
I can start. I will say what I did, I think, learn the lessons from, but don't replicate. I did kind of everything. So I talked to everyone I knew, everyone who had ever mentioned being interested in law school, even people like getting PhDs in English. I was like, it's like what like drew you away from law? I was asking everyone these questions. I was Googling. Of course, I was I was all over Reddit. I was reading all these forums. And I'll be honest, I think being an admission officer myself during the kind of period of time where I was like really seriously, like I was studying for the LSAT, I was like thinking what schools would I apply to? I had a sense of like what information, what like nuggets seemed good and what not to listen to. And I think I just generally knew that, there's a whole bunch of misinformation, a whole bunch of bad advice. And so I was judicious, I think, in choosing what to believe. It kind of felt like I was falling forward, like I was going the right direction.
Right.
I was kind of falling into it.
Yeah.
And I think it worked out. I will say, just full plug for this podcast, I think I discovered it personally a little too late. Like I found out about UVA. I was already in love with UVA. And then I was like, there's this whole like 2 seasons of Admissible I got to listen to. And that certainly helped me decide to go to UVA. But I really appreciate what you're doing. Thanks so much for inviting us on. This is such a cool opportunity. But that was super helpful.
That means so much to me because that is, like I said at the top of the show, really, I just wanted something out there that's like real talk, sometimes maybe a little too like candid, but just so that you feel like, hey, this is a real person reading your file. And like, let me just give you some like honest advice and for no cost and for just in a medium that I think a lot of people enjoy. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Bridget, how about you?
Yeah, I would totally agree with Lance. I feel like I listen to so many podcasts that like even my Spotify Wrapped, like at the end of the year, like it showed like just all these podcasts, these law-related podcasts. But yeah, outside of like podcasts, Googling, and just like leaning heavily on alumni from like my college who like, had gone to law school or
That's
like
a great
who were like I even spoke to like the general counsel of my college. And so just like finding ways to like speak with people who like had gone through this or like were going through it or who just had any knowledge on it.
This is such a great piece of advice, actually, now that especially you can kind of contact people easier than you used to be able to, whether LinkedIn or email or whatever. Like just reaching out to somebody and asking for 10 minutes or a coffee or whatever, like the worst they can do is say no. But I can tell you, this is especially true of UVA law people, but most people who have found some success in their career really relish the opportunity to share kind of their experience. So I think that's a really, really great piece of advice. You don't have to know them. You don't have to have like even a necessarily super direct connection to them. So that's great. When you first got to UVA Law, so a year ago now, which I can't believe. I feel like you guys should still be 1Ls. Time just goes way too fast.
I'm all set. Thanks for the offer.
Yeah, no, not trying to repeat that.
No.
When you got to law school, was it what you expected?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it was what I expected in terms of like the UVA law community. When I had spoken to like current students prior to like starting at the law school, they just like talked about like how friendly everyone was and just how they like felt supported and didn't feel alone. And so I felt like I definitely experienced that my first year. I feel like I experienced it even just like the first month. Yeah, definitely met my expectations.
So I fully agree with what Bridget said. I will say no to it being what I expected, though. But I think that I kind of went into law school with this expectation of professors being mean, being scary, being inaccessible, being really nervous. I don't know, not being able to fit in, not being able to be up to the caliber. Anyway, that was emphatically not what I experienced. And I think exactly what Bridget said. People were really nice. I think people were nervous, too. They were kind of like anxious for everything to get started. It's like it is scary for everyone. But it was incredibly easy to like make friends. I think all of my professors were different in substantive ways and like kind of just their personalities, and like that just made things interesting. It was just like everything I was looking forward to like going back to school, and like it was about the law. So it was like really interesting to me too. So it was like a win-win.
Yeah. Lance, you mentioned like media portrayal or just kind of like the stereotypes about law school. People get very intimidated. And there's sort of a truism that if you didn't have a lawyer in your family or you didn't know any lawyers, like you're going to get there and everybody's going to have like, they're already going to have a network and you're not going to understand what anybody's saying and that it's going to be kind of like this uneven playing field. Was that your experience at all? Like I will say my dad is an attorney and I still got to law school and thought I didn't know anything that was going on. So I think it's a lot broader than just first generation, but I'm wondering if you ever kind of felt that at all.
Yeah, I think from an academic standpoint, I definitely don't feel like there was like a gap or like I was behind. I like to think that my classmates and I were all in the same boat, all like lost at times, and just like finding our way. Career wise, I didn't necessarily like feel that gap, but I think that had a lot to do with like career services on campus, as well as just like student organizations like our organization, and like Virginia Law Women, just to like name a few, who sort of like provided resources and helped to like bridge any potential gaps. But I can see why some might think that, oh, like if you already have like connections coming into law school, it might be a little bit easier. But I didn't like feel like I was missing out on anything. So,
and I will say, you worked at, IBM, you worked at a law firm. Like, I imagine you came in and you're kind of like, I would hope that you were feeling confident that, you were right where you belonged,
Yeah, I feel like law school is just a whole new experience that I didn't know like what to expect. I kind of like knew how to like act in a professional setting, but I still felt like there was a lot that I didn't know, but I felt supported here. So
that's great. And I do, like I said, it's kind of universal.
Yeah.
How about you, Lance?
Yeah, I think that is really one of the beauties of law school is that like regardless of what your background was, I mean, sure, you might have more or less kind of ideas of what to expect, but you're going to be thrown through the ringer. You're like going to have to be kind of lost for a long time, and then it kind of comes together. And I think that the first-gen experience, like as I have experienced it, I think can be broken down into both like a content side, like what I don't know about a thing. And I think content, like, it's easy enough to learn. Like, you just find the right resources out there and you can kind of, learn it. I think the other side is this like pathway thing. I think peers of mine with lawyers in their family or who had been around lawyers growing up, I think they could imagine themselves in that contracts room or, at this firm reception a little bit easier than I could. And like I had worked as well, but, I think there's that difference. And of course you are there and I was there and I think I did all right. I came out of it pretty well, right? But I think there's that kind of confidence. It's both, I think, beautiful to be able to like trailblaze and like write your own story, but it's also, it's difficult. It's a lot of reassuring yourself, and I think finding the right people in your corner that you can fall back on and be like, hey, I did not feel very good about how that went. Like I don't know if I talked to attorneys correctly, and for me, that's like my friends, my family, my girlfriend is really important in that. And I'm happy to say I think that because of the first-gen community, because of the resources that Bridget mentioned, because of the generosity of the people I met at UVA, like I don't feel this anymore. But I think that's the thing that was the most difficult and challenging, at least early on, 1L for me.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question. We've talked about the community, and it sounds like that the community at UVA Law has been valuable to you both as you're kind of navigating it. I think that's one of sort of the best things about the law school is you do feel like you find your people and you have support, not just from your fellow students, but from, like Bridget mentioned, career services and so on. Okay, so now I really want to talk in detail about the student organization of which, Lance, you are the president, and Bridget, you are the vice president. It's the Virginia Law First Generation Professionals. VLFGP. It's like a mouthful. Are you just calling it First Gen?
So the formal name is still VLFGP.
Okay.
Virginia Law First Generation Professionals.
Okay.
But First Gen is slightly easier to say, just slightly easier to say.
So we will, if we say the First Gen organization or VLFGP, we'll all know what we're talking about.
That's right.
VLFGP. Yeah, that's a mouthful. So I'm just going to read from the Student Org's website so that people know kind of what we're talking about. Virginia Law First Generation Professionals focuses on facilitating the transition and integration of first-generation college students, professional students, and Americans and students from low-income or working-class communities into UVA law and the legal profession. Through programming aimed at addressing barriers that exist to advancement in the legal profession, the organization hopes to make the profession a more inclusive space for students of diverse backgrounds and let first-generation students know and feel that they are welcome and supported at UVA law. What a lovely description, I just have to say. And I also believe this is a relatively new organization.
It is. So we're actually celebrating our 5-year anniversary this coming spring.
Okay,
which
congrats.
is exciting.
So that's the official description. Talk to me just a little bit more about what the organization does.
Sure. We try to provide just a lot of useful events, opportunities for our members, people that identify with our mission, who believe that they belong into our group. And we do so, such that you don't have to only be in the first gen group. If you only want to come to our firm events, if you only want to do our mentorship program, you're welcome to do that. But so to actually kind of list things out, we work to pair 1Ls with upper class students, like 2L, 3Ls, as well as with attorney alums if they're interested. We do a variety of different events with firms. I think there is a real kind of shift in the last 5-10 years of first-generation groups being founded on law school campuses, undergrad campuses, and law firms. Different legal organizations have employee groups of first-generation professionals working at that organization. And so this last year, the board planned to have a firm, only first-gen lawyers from a firm come and kind of do a panel to our members, in addition to working with the Office of Private Practice or Public Service or clerkships to do kind of first-gen specific programming. And this year, we're also trying to lean into more community building things as well. One thing I'm really excited about is working to do some care packages during finals.
Yes. Yes. Stressful season, so.
Yeah. In undergrad, we had a thing called Stress Busters, which I don't know if I'm legally allowed to steal the name, but something to that effect of just free food, candy, face masks, candles, something like that. Just things to hopefully do some self-care when you're really busy.
Can you come to my office around January, February? That would be
You're
great.
welcome to swing by.
Yeah, I think Lance touched on most of it. I really enjoyed that our organization also partners with other student organizations at UVA Law, because a lot of our members don't just identify as first gen, they also identify as being a woman or being Black or just whatever other identity. I've really enjoyed those partnership events, as well as just the other great events that Lance mentioned. And I know last year our organization did a lot of work with the undergrad first generation organization at UVA. They did a mentorship program. I found that to be really great. I'm hoping that we can continue that this year. I think just mentorship opportunities are just really important, especially being first gen, being able to connect with someone who has dealt with the same type of experience, and just will be there to support you and just let you know that everything will be all right. So
yeah. Apart from what the student organization VLFGP offers, are there any other avenues of support that you think are specifically useful to anyone listening out there who thinks, okay, that student group is great? What else should I be on the lookout for in law school? You mentioned, Bridget, career services, anything else you can point to?
I would also say just student affairs, student records. I know I've utilized them a lot for academic support and just academic counseling. I just had a meeting today just to get my life together, essentially. They're really great. They've helped me create schedules, both like monthly schedules as well as weekly schedules, just so that I'm not feeling overwhelmed and I know how to like approach the semester and approach the year. And so definitely would utilize any like sort of student affairs services in law school.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think UVA has this like great sweet spot of being big enough where it feels like vibrant and dynamic, but also small enough where like OPP or like public service and clerkships and student affairs, like they know you, they get to know you, they remember you, they like talk to you, like they ask if you want to meet, you can meet, and like they help you with like these very discrete tasks, like in your own life. It's like very personalized. And like that was invaluable to me, especially my first semester at UVA. On the other side, the other day, Dean Davies reached out to me and introduced me to a student that was interested in joining First Gen. That, I think, speaks volumes to the role that, you know, offices like Student Affairs play in our community, where, you know, they really can provide this other avenue of getting connected to your people, finding your community. And how lucky are we to have
very
people
lucky.
that care that much?
I'm so glad you said that, because that is just knowing those people personally, like they are
They're
such
great.
lovely people,
They're
and
great.
they are really here for you guys
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
want to help. So I'm so glad you're taking advantage. So we've talked a lot about how wonderful the community is, which it's hard to talk about UVA law without talking about that. And I'm so glad that you all have felt that, and that you too are helping to continue to build on that community and build it out. That's really great. Just to keep it real, I want to talk about like what has been the most challenging part of law school for you both.
I think for me, there were two things. One was just like being away from family and friends who I'd spent a lot of time with, had grown up with. I think also just like, especially that 1L fall was definitely a big learning curve. I feel like I felt lost all the way until like November, and then things started to like make sense and click. But that was a bit challenging. Just like in college, I'd prided myself on like doing well and just like making sure to like understand the material. And so I got to law school, and that was a little bit challenging at first to fully like understand the material. But I mean, I made it.
You made it. And by the way, just for your benefit, but also for everybody listening, that is so normal. I mean, it's when a 1L walks into my office and is like, I know everything, and like I just nailed that exam, that I'm like, oh gosh, like that's not a good sign. Like you should feel like, like I'm so lost, and like I don't know anything, and it will come together, and sometimes it won't fully come together, but you're going to be okay. And you know, nobody is going to master this material like in the first week or month or year, frankly. It's just a process. And I hope that you can look back and just really let yourself acknowledge how much you have learned in the last year. I like to just give people a realistic perspective. It is going to be challenging. It is going to be almost like scary, because everybody, we admit, is used to being smart and accomplished and top of their class, and they have it all together. And it's sometimes difficult for that to kind of fall away, and you realize, oh gosh, what did I do?
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree with everything Bridget said. I think for me, it was kind of this perpetual uncertainty. I think there's just like always this nagging fear, like, what if I'm not actually supposed to be in this seat, right? Like, what if that's, and I think probably everyone goes through that. I do think that it's at least kind of accordant with my like previous experiences as a first-gen student in college. And I think like just kind of going out and like not really knowing what the litmus test is, not having like your parents to compare it to, not having lawyers in your life to compare it to. But on the flip side, like overcoming it is pretty great, you know, and I think my kind of mantra this whole time has been like, you'll get through that hard challenge, and when you do, you better turn around and help the next person through as well, right? And so I'm excited for that work, yeah.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, people who are drawn to law school really don't like uncertainty. You know, like a lot of us kind of like to know, like, what's the answer? You know, am I in the right place? And, you know, you were all admitted for a reason. As I joked a couple years ago at orientation, don't you dare question my judgment. You belong here. But uncertainty is real. You know, not understanding the material is real. And as a lawyer, you're going to have those moments where you're not sure, and that's what asking your fellow colleagues is for. That's what leaning on others is for. And I love that both of you are giving back in that way, like helping others who might have felt that way. Bridget and Lance, for our listeners out there who are first-generation college, first-generation professional, or both, who are currently thinking about applying to law school or in the process of applying to law school, what advice can you offer them? I know that you probably have lots to say, but if you could really just distill it down into a sentence or two.
I think for me, I would say I heard this like when I was going through my application process, and I think it just like is true for like not just the law school process, but like don't say no, let them tell you no. So like don't self-select out. When I was like applying to certain schools, I felt like I wasn't like qualified or I didn't have like the right credentials, and I found that to not be true. And so, yeah, I would just say don't like self-select out. Like don't tell yourself no before they tell you no.
Right.
So.
Make them tell you no. I love that. I will not love that during like, when scholarship season rolls around, but it's okay. I will tell you no.
I feel like I just got goosebumps. That's so true. I love that advice. I 100% yes to that. I think also like I feel like you will almost certainly fail many times along the way, like so many times, like sometimes spectacularly. I'm kind of projecting from my own experiences, to be clear. Whether that's the LSAT or your initial draft on an essay or an interview you do or whatever, but take a beat, realize what happened, think about maybe why it happened, but just keep going. I think it's maybe the inverse, or it's the same idea as what Bridget said. Like, let them say no. Do not count yourself out, and you really can do it. I mean, you really can.
Yeah. And it's like we said back when, you said you reached out to people. The worst they can do is say no, and you'll go on to the next person, or you'll figure out another way. You never know if you don't try. So I think that both of what you said is really resonating with me from just what I want applicants to know. Anything else we didn't talk about, whether like advice or your experience or anything you think listeners should know?
I can't guarantee that I'll be able to like give hours of my time, but like my email is out there under the organization. Like feel free to reach out if there are like questions about UVA and you want a student perspective. I know it can be intimidating to reach out to the admission office and ask somebody who is also reviewing your file to answer a question. So feel free. I know I probably haven't met you yet, but feel free to use me as a resource 100%.
I agree. Yeah, I'm open and available.
Well, thank you both, Lance and Bridget, not only for offering up, to be a resource for other folks, but just everything you're doing for VLFGP and the UVA law community, and for taking time to come on the show. Like I said, this has been a topic that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm just so grateful that I got you two here in the studio. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. This is truly, again, another surreal experience and an incredible one.
Yes.
This has been Admissible with me, Dean Natalie Blazer at the University of Virginia School of Law. My guests today were second-year UVA law students Lance Ledet and Bridget Mensah. For more information about UVA law, please visit law.virginia.edu. The next episode of Admissible will be out soon. In the meantime, you can follow the show on Instagram at Admissible Podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and please remember to rate the show wherever you listen to podcasts.